Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. The Curse of Oak Island. The drill team finds a massive underground tunnel, bigger than anything before. The Curse of Oak Island team has found the largest tunnel ever excavated on the island. At an incredible 7.5 feet tall, the guys are convinced the tunnel must have been used to transport something large and important. The Curse of Oak Island Season 11 returned last night with Episode 3, with many more exciting discoveries. On Lot 5, Gary Drayton and Rick Lagina unearthed an old ramrod guide, a device used to push projectiles into a musket that could date anywhere from the 1600s. However, the most interesting development from last night's episode was regarding an elusive secret tunnel. The guys have been attempting to track a tunnel they believe runs under the garden shaft from east to west and into the baby blob, and they've been having enormous success. The tunnel lies just over 100 feet below the surface, and the team hopes it will direct them to a secret chamber where they'll find untold riches. Oak Island team believes the tunnel dates to mid-18th century. On last night's episode, Craig Tester received the results of carbon-14 dating on a piece of wood pulled up from 108 feet to the east of the garden shaft. The guys were not disappointed as the woodcuts were dated at 55% from 1734 to 1804 and 24% from 1656 to 1684. The team read this data as meaning the tunnel was likely constructed as far back as the 1730s, over 50 years before the initial discovery of the Money Pit, which the depositors most likely built. And what a tunnel it turned out to be. The drill team then set up their rig a bit closer to the garden shaft, but still on the eastern side, and again they hit evidence of a tunnel. At 108 feet, they hauled up a hopping 7.5-foot-long wooden beam. Terry Matheson instantly identified it as an upright beam, meaning this tunnel was almost 8 feet high, higher than any tunnel they'd found before. The beam had markings which showed it had been cut by hand, maybe with an adze tool, so it was likely made before the invention of mechanical saws. The guys were absolutely blown away by the size of this beam. They asked why anyone would build a 7.5-foot tunnel at over 100 feet below the surface, unless they were transporting a large amount of goods and wanted to do it in secret. The labor required to pull off such a feat in the mid-18th century is somewhat mind-boggling. Alex Lagina commented that he had only seen tunnels that size when visiting medieval Templar knight strongholds in Italy. Rick Lagina noted that they had never found a tunnel more than 4 or 5 feet high, and there was no indication of anything like this in the historical record. Oak Island guys will have to excavate the garden shaft to get to the 7-foot tunnel. The team couldn't wait to get a closer look at what was down there, so they popped a camera down the borehole, which soon plunged into the water and revealed nothing but a blank screen. Steve Guptill peered down the hole and helpfully remarked that he could see which, and it was murky. We'll all just have to be a bit more patient. Representatives from Dumas Mining Company informed the guys they should have the permits to start working on the garden shaft by the end of the month. Once the miners get their paperwork in order, they can start deepening the garden shaft and then hopefully begin lateral digging toward this tunnel, so we can all see what is really going on down there. In the meantime, Gary and the guys are bound to find more interesting stuff on Lot 5. Apart from the ancient Roman coins found a couple of weeks ago, they keep uncovering a selection of pottery and artifacts going back to the 17th and 18th centuries. The guys are increasingly convinced that the mid-18th century, around the 1740s, is the time period when something major occurred on Oak Island. The Curse of Oak Island had always been a tale of whispers, a legend steeped in shadows. Year after year, the brothers Rick and Marty Lagina dug into the island's soil, driven by an unshakable conviction that something monumental was buried deep beneath the surface. But even after a decade of searching, they still hadn't found the ultimate proof. Until today, the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the desolate dig site. The excavation team, weary but determined, prepared for yet another day of drilling. The latest borehole, known simply as Borehole Z93, had already plunged deeper than any other in their long pursuit of the treasure, nearly 200 feet into the island's mysterious depths. Rick stood over the massive drill rig, arms crossed, his brow furrowed in anticipation, Marty, ever the pragmatist, stood beside him with a clipboard in hand, tracking the progress. Craig Tester, the resident engineer and geologist, was glued to a nearby monitor, analyzing the seismic readings as the drill gnawed through layer after layer of rock. They had encountered strange anomalies before: underground cavities, mysterious metal objects, strange deposits of ancient wood. But borehole Z93 was different. The readings suggested an enormous void below, unlike anything they'd encountered. As the drill hit 215 feet, the rig began to shudder. The machine's whine echoed across the dig site, loud and unsettling. Suddenly, the sound shifted. A faint, metallic screech. The kind of sound no one wanted to hear at this depth. The team gathered around the rig, their expressions a mix of excitement and anxiety. Craig stared intently at the screen, his face pale. "Guys," he muttered, "this isn't a small void. This is something big." "How big?" Marty asked, leaning in. Craig hesitated. "We're talking about something huge, way larger than any tunnel or cavity we've found before. It's at least 50 feet wide and runs laterally beneath the island for a considerable distance." A moment of stunned silence hung in the air. 50 feet? That wasn't a simple cavity left by nature or human hands centuries ago. It had to be something more. Rick's heart raced. He had always believed that Oak Island held its secrets close, that its many tunnels and booby traps were only a prelude to a much larger, much more significant structure buried beneath. This might finally be the key. "We need to lower the camera," Rick said, his voice steady but intense. "I want to see what we're dealing with." Within minutes, the team had rigged up their underwater camera, preparing to lower it down borehole Z93. The camera, specially designed for deep exploration, descended slowly, its bright lights casting eerie shadows on the slick rock walls of the borehole. As it neared the suspected cavity, the footage on the monitor flickered and warped, the camera adjusting to the sudden expanse before it. The team held their breath. The camera's lights pierced through the darkness, revealing nothing. For a moment, it was as if they were staring into an endless void. Then slowly, details began to emerge. The walls of the tunnel were not natural rock formations. They were smooth, almost unnaturally so, and etched with strange, geometric patterns. The team gasped in unison. These markings weren't the result of erosion or simple mining. They were deliberate, crafted by hands long gone. "Look at that," Craig whispered, pointing at the screen. "Those markings, they're ancient. I've never seen anything like them." The camera continued to drift, scanning the vast underground expanse. As the light illuminated more of the tunnel, something else caught the team's eye. Embedded into the far wall was a massive metallic structure, gleaming faintly in the dim light. "What is that?" Marty asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't know," Rick replied, his eyes glued to the monitor. "But it's not natural." The structure appeared to be some kind of ancient doorway or gate, large enough for a person to walk through. It was made of a dark, unidentifiable metal, and its surface was adorned with strange, cryptic symbols that none of them recognized. Rick's mind raced. Could this be the entrance to the legendary vault they had been searching for? The money pit, the supposed final resting place of the treasure? Or was it something else entirely, something far older and more mysterious?